Hello. We were talking about a linear triatomic molecule last time. So I'll start by doing a quick recap and then we'll continue from there. Okay. So that's the plan for today. So we were saying that we have a molecule which is linear, and by that I mean that in its equilibrium configuration all the atoms of the molecule are aligned in a line. Okay, so we were writing like the following. So let's say this is the line on which all the particles are aligned. This is particle number 1, this is particle number 2, this has some mass capital M, and the two at the ends have the same mass. Okay, and we also said that we are going to measure their displacements from these positions. These are the positions of equilibrium. Okay, so if this particle gets displaced from its position, either this direction or that direction, I'll call it x1. Okay, similarly x2 and x3. Okay, and our equilibrium is at x1 equal to x2, and that is equal to x3, and they all are 0. Okay, now we had written down the Lagrangian of this system as half Tij xi dot xj dot minus half uij xi xj. Let me also remind you what the Tij is. The matrix corresponding to Tij I was writing as this T. This is just diagonal matrix with these entries. Okay, and we had written down U. Maybe I should write it down again. The matrix corresponding to Uij I was denoting by this U. Okay, boldface basically. This U is equal to K minus K0. You should check that what I am writing is symmetric. 0 minus K looks symmetric, so it's good. So that's the matrix we have. And then we said if we do a transformation from x, so this x is basically a column vector, to z, let me write the components here, or maybe I should write the components of the x. So xi, so this is same as before. Let me write it again. Xi, if I do the transformation, that instead of xi I start using zi's, which are related to the xi's by this transformation. So you just absorb the square root of mass in the corresponding x, and that is the definition of z. If you do so, then your Lagrangian becomes the following. Then your Lagrangian becomes half zi square zi dot square, that's the kinetic term, minus half ij, they all run from 1 to 3, uij prime zi zj. Okay, and U prime will still be a symmetric matrix. And then we had found the eigenvalues of U prime. Okay, that's what we did last time. We found the eigenvalues of U prime. Okay, by U prime I mean the matrix U prime, which corresponds to these elements. Okay, and we found that it has 3 eigenvalues, which we expect because our equation was cubic, and the eigenvalues are the following. Lambda 1 is k over m, lambda 2 is k over m times 1 plus 2m, the entire thing divided by capital M, and lambda 3 was 0. I've changed the order in which what I'm calling lambda 3 I was calling in the last lecture as lambda 1, but now we'll follow this naming. Okay, this will be that is how I want to do. Note that this quantity lambda 1 is greater than 0, the lambda 2 is also greater than 0, and lambda 3 is anyway 0. So this is where we had stopped last time, and let's proceed from here. Now what I want to do is I want to put the second quadratic form, which is here. See, this is anyway diagonal now. Not only diagonal, the coefficients are unity. But this quadratic form I want to put as a sum of squares, and that's the plan. So let me go to the next slide, or maybe yeah, next slide. Let's go. So just remember, you have a half u prime z I z j. Okay. So now our task is put this quadratic form u prime I j z I z j as sum of squares. See, I'm just following the steps which I took when I was talking about the mathematical these 2 videos where I discussed about some of the mathematical quantities which I'll be using in this course. So there we had done all this in general. I'm just applying those things for the specific case of this triatomic molecule, okay, as a sum of squares. Very good. So what we have to do is, so let me write this using column vectors and matrices. So I will write u prime I j z I z j as column vector or row vector z transpose matrix u prime column vector z. Okay, and the entries are z1, z2 and z3. Now this, I know that I can diagonalize u prime by an orthogonal transformation, which means that there are matrices, which means that there is a matrix O, which when I put O transpose and O next to u prime, it will become a diagonal matrix. Okay, so that's what I'm going to utilize here. So let me write this as u prime, okay, O transpose O transpose. So basically I've done nothing because O transpose O is unity. This is also unity, so I've done nothing. And you have Z transpose, so I've written the original thing again. So this is identically equal to this. I've done nothing. Now as I know that, by the way, this O is the one which diagonalizes. So this matrix here I will call lambda, okay, and lambda will be a diagonal matrix. And this quantity I will call Q, and this then becomes Q prime. Okay, Q, not Q prime, sorry, Q transpose. So what we get here is Q transpose lambda Q. Okay, Q is a column vector where Q is Q1, Q2 and Q3. Okay, and my lambda is, let me write it here, diagonal lambda 1, sorry, lambda 1, lambda 2 and lambda 3. Okay, that's good. So what do I have for my Lagrangian now? My Lagrangian looks like this: half q1 dot square, okay, and then from here there was a half already. Let me write down first all the kinetic pieces. So half q2 dot square plus half q3 dot square. Then the potential terms will give you minus half lambda 1 q1 square. Is that clear? So this, so there is a half already it was there, which I have not written here. Maybe I should write half, half, and a half, and a half. Okay, fine. So this is q. If you write it in components, it will be q1 lambda 1 q1 plus q2 lambda 2 q2 and so forth, which is what is giving us these terms, minus half lambda 2 q2 square, and then you have the lambda 3 term, and lambda 3 is 0, so I'm not going to write this. Okay, so that term is gone, which means that q3 is cyclic, as I mentioned last time. Okay, which also means that q3 dot, this is the momentum corresponding to q3, is a conserved quantity, so it has to be constant. Okay, which means the derivative dq over dt, this is a constant. That's one thing. And if you look at the Lagrangian, apart from the appearance of q3, which we will talk about later, it's trivial actually. What you have is a sum of two harmonic oscillators, which I mentioned last time. So if you look at this piece and that piece, they together form a harmonic oscillator, and these two form another harmonic oscillator. Okay, with frequencies given by the frequencies of two oscillators are given by omega 1 square is lambda 1 and omega 2 square is lambda 2. Okay, that's good. There was something which I wanted to say. Let me see. Don't remember now. Anyway, okay, this is fine. Now so here is my Lagrangian. Okay, okay, let me go to the next slide. So the Lagrangian that we have, I will write down as L of, L is a harmonic oscillator here, described by frequency 1, Lagrangian of harmonic oscillator described by frequency 2, plus a term which is half q3 dot square. That's what we have. And this, just a second, let me remove this animation timeline. Now this system I can pictorially represent like this. So my system is equivalent to that of having two harmonic oscillators. Let's say I have two pendulums, one which corresponds to the coordinate q1 and has frequency omega 1, which is square root of lambda 1 basically, and then you have another harmonic oscillator described by your normal coordinate q2, and which this pendulum has frequency omega 2. Okay, I'll tell you that later. This is really unimportant, so that's why I'm not worried about it. I'll show you later. But anyway, the Lagrangian for our system is this. The system is equivalent to this. See, don't worry about what algebra we have done and what system we started with. As far as where we stand now, this is the Lagrangian of the system and it is equivalent to this thing, right? This is the system which we are having now in front of us. Okay, now if this is a system that is given to you, then it is your choice which pendulum or which oscillator you want to set in motion. So you may choose to keep this one at rest so that this one does not move at all, so the mass keeps sitting here and only this oscillator is oscillating. Okay, so let me write that is one option you have. So you can put the coordinate q1 to be 0 at all the times and only q2 is oscillating. Okay, that's one. So I say that my system is oscillating in mode 2. Okay, if I should have written mode 1 first, but anyway, no problem. If I put q2 to be 0 at all the times, meaning this guy is just standing still here at rest and only this one is oscillating, then of course q1 is oscillating, then my system is oscillating in normal mode 1. That's what we say. Okay, so, and of course you can do this because these two oscillators are independent, they are not coupled. Okay, and that's what a normal mode is, and that's how you can choose to set these make your system oscillate in one mode or the other. Okay, so you may simultaneously put all other modes. Let's say your system was equivalent to having hundreds of oscillators, so you may choose to excite only one normal mode and all other modes you can keep at rest. Now, okay, that's all good, looks nice, but you might be wondering how you are going to put your molecule to oscillate in the first mode or in the second mode. What should you do that your triatomic molecule is oscillating in the first mode or the second mode? Okay, so for that you need to know how your normal coordinates are related to the coordinates x1, x2 and x3. Okay, so that's what we are going to address. So let me write down in short that okay, I hope you understand what we are saying. So let us find qi's in terms of xi's. Okay, that's our task now. Okay, so let me use black. Good, and that is not difficult. Let me put a okay, anyhow, so you know, I already said that if I look at my matrix U prime, it's diagonalized by an orthogonal transformation, which is this, and that will put it in this form where lambda is diagonal and our the diagonalizing matrix O or O transpose, let me write down for O transpose, are the eigenvectors xi1, xi2. These xi1, xi2 and xi3 are the eigenvectors of U prime. Okay, that you will already know from your matrix understanding of matrices, which we also talked about a couple of videos ago. Okay, so these xi1, xi2, xi3 are the column vectors. Okay, so this is a column, this is a column, this is a column. That's how you get a matrix. And as we talked some time back, these are eigenvectors. Okay. Also remember that xi i's should be normalized. Okay, I hope you understand why. You see, when you solve the eigenvalue equation, you get eigenvectors, but any multiple of the eigenvector is also an eigenvector with the same eigenvalue, right? And you also remember that when we were talking about diagonalization, when we looked at orthogonal matrices, the matrix, for the matrix to be orthogonal, not only all the columns should be orthogonal to each other, each column vector should be normal. So it's the magnitude of that each column vector should be 1. So whatever eigenvectors you get, you should normalize them. Okay, so that their magnitudes is magnitude of that vector, each vector eigenvector is 1. Okay, so that is what the xi I should be. Now I'll give you a set of simple exercises to do so that you can arrive at the final result. So let me list them down. Exercise 1. Okay, maybe some. So find xi I and construct O transpose, the O transpose which I talked just now. So that's what you have to do, which basically amounts to doing the following. So you should show, that is, you show that for lambda 1 equals k by m for this eigenvalue, and the corresponding eigenvector xi 1 is -1. Okay, the color has changed. Anyway, I'll write. Let me try to change the color. Okay, -1, 0, 1. Okay, and as I said, we should normalize it, which means I should divide it by a constant c1, where c1 will be just xi1 square under root. Okay, if you do so, then the vector xi1 will be normalized. And also please find the eigenvector corresponding to this eigenvalue, which I am writing now. These are the ones which we found earlier, right? So just find xi2. Xi2 is, again you have to normalize, so I am dividing by 1 over c2, which you should find. And you'll find when you calculate the eigenvector, this is -2 small m over m, capital M, and square root. Okay, fine. I'll tell you why I had stopped for a second. You see, I was checking the dimensions. So all the time you should be checking for dimensions. So this is dimensionless. This is dimensionless, so which is good. So this guy should also be dimensionless. Otherwise, clearly we have made a mistake. So here you have 1 mass, and here you have 2, but then it's a square root, so it cancels the mass dimension, and that makes it perfectly fine dimensionless, dimension wise. So hopefully that is correct. Then you should find out the c2. c2 is again xi2 square. Okay, if you divide by this will be a normalized vector, the xi2. And for lambda 3 equal to 0, you will get xi3 1 over c3 1, then you have capital M over small m in the square root, and then you have 1 here. Okay, and as before, C3 is xi 3 square under root. Okay. मैंने सेव नहीं किया ना वीडियो. Okay. Now it's trivial, but I will nevertheless write down. Your C1 is root 2, C2 is 2 plus 4m over m in the square root, and C3 will turn out to be 2 capital M over m. Okay, so please do these exercises. Yeah, fine. And then what? Yes. Then next exercise is the following. Exercise 2. Okay, I want to switch back to black color. Okay. Now you have to form O and O transpose, and as I showed earlier, our O transpose is just xi1, xi2, xi3, these three column vectors placed together, and check that when you have placed all these normalized xi1, xi2, xi3 into a column, into a matrix, they satisfy this. Okay, this will give you confidence that the calculation you have done is correct, or the results that I'm giving to you are correct. Now let's look at exercise number 3. So also check that U prime O transpose, that comes out to be the diagonal matrix which we have been writing. So that will be another check. Now let's look at the normal coordinates. Okay, we wanted to know what Q is in terms of our x1, x2 and x3, and that's easy to find out because your Q is O times Z, where Z is the column vector containing Z1, Z2, Z3. Let's go back and see that. Somewhere here I should have written it. Yeah, here. You see the Q is O times Z, right? Okay. And if you also recall what Z was obtained by multiplying a diagonal matrix M1 square root of M2 square root of M3, where M1, M2, M3, M1 and M3 are small m and capital M is M2. This times x1, x2, x3. Okay, let's go back and check. Somewhere here should be. Yeah, here you see the Z is related to X by this, which is what I'm writing now in terms of a diagonal matrix. Okay, so again another exercise. Check that when you multiply all this O, the O you have found already, this diagonal matrix and this x1, you get the following. So you get the Q to be this. X3 minus x1 m over 2 in the square root. Then you get x1 minus 2x2 plus x3. Okay, and the coefficient is not square root, m over 2m plus capital M. The entire thing is divided by capital M, and this is in the square root. Let's check dimension wise. This and this piece have same dimensions, and here it is a square root of M, so we should have a square root of M here as well. Now see, this is M times m, so m square divided by mass, it becomes m. So there is a mass in the square root and there is a mass in the numerator. Okay, and so this works out. And then the third one is and that looks, no, it does not look strange, it's fine. 2m plus m. I'll tell you why I was surprised for a moment. I saw this factor in the denominator, which is 1 over square root of m, and I thought I'm doing something wrong. But then I have a mass here, which these together make the same as here. So it's all fine. There is no mistake, I believe. Okay, so that is the Q. So you know what your normal coordinates are in terms of x1, x2, and x3. Okay, so here I have written down the normal coordinates. Okay, and let's first settle the Q3. Okay, as I have said several times before, Q3 is cyclic. Okay, it doesn't appear in the Lagrangian because the corresponding eigenvalue lambda 3 is 0. Okay, so that term will not appear. Q3 will not appear, but there is a kinetic term corresponding to Q3. And because Q3 is cyclic, the Q3 dot, okay, that is conserved, meaning this is a constant. That also we have talked about several times, which means that this quantity here, okay, if I take the time derivative of this, that would be a constant. So since this is a constant, I will absorb it into the constant of the right hand side in this equation, and I get the condition that d over dt of m x1 plus x3 plus capital M x2, the time derivative of this entire thing is 0. Sorry, it's 0, correct. No, constant. As I said, constant. Okay. Now to interpret what this means, let's do the following. So we go back to our molecule. Here it is. Okay. And let's say here our capital M, the mass, the particle number 2 is here. Let's say the particle number 3 is here. And the particle number 1 is here. Okay. And along the x-axis, let's mark their equilibrium positions. Okay. So here let me call it x1, 0, this position. This position as x2, 0, and this as x3, 0. Okay, so these are the equilibrium configurations, and as the particle moves, so this is the displacements are given by x1, x2, and x3. Okay, understand that what I'm doing right now is marking along the x-axis the values of the positions of equilibrium configuration. Okay, this is different from what I was saying earlier, and they are not in conflict with each other. So earlier I had put them to be 0, but then those were the values of the generalized coordinates which were put to 0 in the equilibrium configuration. But here I am marking where they are along the x-axis. Okay, so it's clear that there is no contradiction with what I said earlier. This is fine. Okay, so let's ask now. So let's say at any time t, if the displacement is x1, x2, or x3, then the particle will be located at xi0 plus xi, right? where I runs from 1 to 3. This will be the location of the particle. Okay. Now let's ask where the center of mass is. So the location of the center of mass I'm going to denote by R. Okay. So center of mass is located at M. So this first one, this guy, it is located at x10 plus x1, and the other guy on this end is located at x30 plus x3, and they have this and that have both mass m, so I can combine here, plus x30 plus x3, and then you have mx2 0 plus x2. This entire thing divided by the total mass of the system. Okay, which I can write down as m x10 plus x30 plus capital M x20 plus mx10 plus mx1 plus x3 plus capital M x2. Okay. Okay, and I should divide by the total mass here as well. Okay, very good. Now the yeah, let's go. Now if I take dr over dt, this term will give zero contribution because these are all constants, and you get a non-zero contribution from here, which is 1 over 2m plus m d over dt of that quantity. Okay, this is a constant. Now I can choose that constant. It's up to me, right? So I choose that constant to be 0. Okay, so choose dr over dt to be 0. Okay, what it means is that the speed of, or the velocity of, the center of mass is 0. So the center of mass stays put at one place. Okay, that's what this equation is saying. Okay, so if I do so, then it means that the center of mass is at rest. Okay, that's good. Now this means that my r is a constant, right? Because dr over dt is 0, so r is a constant. Now r is the sum of these two pieces, this and this. Okay, and if r is a constant, then this entire thing also has to be a constant. Okay, and if this has to be a constant, and these things x1, x2 and x3, they are changing with time, I can ensure that the r will remain constant only if this vanishes. So if this vanishes, then r is going to remain a constant. So all I'm saying is that these displacements x1, x2 and x3, they have to be obeying a constraint that center of mass remains fixed, and which is equivalent to saying that I have the constraint mx1 plus x3 plus mx2 equal to 0. Okay, so that's what I get. Okay, now what I will do is I will take this, okay, and substitute in Q and look at what my normal coordinates look like when I impose this. Okay, this is nothing extra, it's a choice I make. It's basically saying that I'm going to a frame of reference where center of mass is at rest. If you go to another one, it will be moving with some velocity. And also, yeah, that's what basically I'm saying. Okay, so let's make this substitution in Q, and please show that this is what you get. This is trivial to show. So exercise, show that upon substituting mx1 plus x3 plus mx2 equal to 0, our normal coordinates become the following. Let me write down. I hope this is the last time I'm writing this. x3 minus x1. Okay, and looks, this we had already. Yes, that we had already. The second one looks neater now. So you have m 2m plus capital M over 2m, and this is the coefficient of x3 plus x1. Okay, the third one is 0. Okay, please show this. This is a trivial exercise. Now this all looks very neat. This coordinate q is q3 is 0. We have fixed it to 0. Okay, now let's interpret what we have as our coordinates q1 and q2. So let's say my system is oscillating in the mode q1, okay, and q2 mode is not activated. So let's call mode q1. Okay, so which is basically this thing. You remember I was saying I can activate whichever I want. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm activating only the mode q1. If I do so and I keep the q2 at rest, meaning q2 will be 0 at all the times, that would amount to saying that this is q2, remember, x3 should be equal to minus x1 at all the times in this mode. So let's go back to see them. Do I have it somewhere? Yeah, here. So it means that x1 and x3 are opposite to each other, right? You see here, x3 is equal to minus x1. So if x3, let's say, goes in this direction by some amount, then x1 goes in the opposite direction by the same amount. Okay, and when this goes this way, this goes this way. Okay, so the molecule and x2 of course remains put here. I mean, x2 has to remain at the same place all the times, because otherwise the center of mass will not be at the same location. So which means that in this mode, this mass stays put and these two masses oscillate in a very symmetric manner. Okay, so if this is going out, that is going out. If this is coming inside, that is coming inside. So that oscillation is a symmetric oscillation. So molecule moves symmetrically in this. vibrates in a symmetric manner. Okay, so I can also rename my Q1 to be Q symmetric. Okay, so that's a symmetric mode. Another one would be mode Q2, in which Q2 is moving, oscillating, and Q1 is at rest. So Q1t is equal to 0 for all times, and that would imply that x3 is equal to x1. Okay, let's go back and see. It means that if x3 goes in this direction, then x1 also goes in this direction, and clearly then x2 will have to move in the opposite direction, right, to make the center of mass remain fixed at its original location. So in this case, the molecule is moving asymmetrically. So it's not a symmetric kind of motion, but it is asymmetric. So here, molecule vibrates asymmetrically, and I can also rename the label Q2 to Q asymmetric. Okay, that's about the motion of a linear triatomic molecule, and as I said, we were only looking at the longitudinal oscillations. Okay, now you may ask, what if I look at other modes? So this molecule can do other things as well. Okay, so we'll talk about first we'll talk about a general molecule and what will be its vibrational modes in most general context in the next video, and we'll say more about this triatomic molecule, I believe. Okay, so good for this, and I hope you are doing all the exercises that I have been giving during these lectures. See you in the next video.